Good evening or afternoon, everyone. We welcome you to our young couples program. Today we're tackling what I think we will call it like a delicate, sensitive topic. But we would like to welcome all these ladies, the very brave ladies that have decided to share with us and to empower someone out there who's going through the same experience at this time, or who's been through it before and is still struggling to get over it. And we want to really thank them for the time that they've taken apart from their schedules. So today we're speaking about a topic of miscarriages, and joining us are these ladies that you can see here. But before we start the program, I'm just going to ask Kuzi to pray for us first before we dive right into it.
All right, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for this beautiful Sabbath that you have blessed us with. Thank you for allowing us to come together and discuss this very important topic. We pray that you may touch each and every one who is going to join this program, and anyone who has been affected, Lord, by this topic. We pray that you may send them comfort. May you also be with the ladies that have agreed to join the platform, and thank you for being with them and allowing them to be used by you through them, Lord. May you be with us as we go through this program, and may it be a blessing to someone else. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So, well, when I was browsing through, I went to the NHS website, and it actually turns out that 1 in 8, I think about 1 in 8 women actually experience pregnancy loss. That's how common it is. So there is, I think, a discrepancy between how often it happens to people versus how often people actually talk about it or share about it. And because of this, we decided to just demystify some of the things and just to share experiences, just so that somebody out there can know that they're not alone. So to start with, I'll just ask each of these ladies to introduce themselves and to tell us their background story and how they can relate to this topic and their experience. So I'll start with, who wants to start first? Okay, I'll start with Sharon. Do you want to go first?
Just right. That was pre-calculated, wasn't it? That's absolutely fine. My name is Sharon Manatsa. I'm a gospel artist based here in the UK. I'm originally from Zimbabwe. I came from Zimbabwe when I was a very young girl. I could just say when I was 9 years old. My story is that back in 2016, we experienced a child loss ourselves. This was unexpected. At 28 weeks, we went for our regular scan just to check how baby's progressing, and it was found that there was some swelling in his brain, but they disregarded it in that time to sort of say, well, actually we can investigate it over time to see what's going on. And I was booked in for the following week for a review with the consultants. Unfortunately, I didn't even make it to that second appointment as planned for another sonography scan. It didn't happen. I woke up on a Wednesday morning with a heavy bleed. I felt like I was going on my periods, you know, a heavy lower back pain. It just didn't make sense. And I went on Google, you know, in panic mode, you go on Google to sort of identify what your symptoms are. And I was seeing stuff saying, oh, you might be going into preterm labor. And I was worried. I was thinking, oh, I'm 7 months now. Do I really want baby to come early and everything like that? So my husband was like, well, we're not sure what's going on yet. We'll just call the hospital. But for now, just take some paracetamol and have some rest. I literally put my head down and the bleeding became heavier to the point that I said, I probably think this is baby coming. I'm not sure. And we had to rush to get the ambulance to come and take us to the hospital. When the ambulance arrived, all they said to me was, we need to do your physical checks first to see if you're okay. And I was like, but you need to check baby. But unfortunately, the order is we have to check if mom is well enough first, and then we deal with the fetus, you know. Then in that moment, they said to me, your blood pressure is really high. We're really surprised that you're talking to us right now, because I was very responsive. I wasn't indicating any pain. And if I remember correctly, my blood pressure was 200/198. And they thought, you're probably going to go in a stroke or something. We just need to rush you in and go. We just started praying, just hoping for the best, because we didn't know. And the ladies were very reassuring. They were very professional. They said, oh, it could be that baby's just decided to come early, but we're taking you to the right place where you'll be taken care of. As soon as we got there, as the process is that you're put on different machines, you're plugged into, some needles, etc., to ensure that you are safe, because they were so scared that I probably was going to lose my life in that moment, and they wanted to ensure that they stabilized my health. We were taken, after everything was stabilized, we were taken into the room to have an ultrasound, and devastatingly we had those words that you don't want to hear, is we cannot find the heartbeat. You can only imagine how I felt and how my husband felt in that moment, because that's not what we were expecting to hear. And to me, I didn't know the science of what do you mean you can't find the heartbeats. And they said, but before I confirm anything, I just need to get my senior to come and do a second check to ensure what I'm saying is correct. So a senior colleague came in and did the checks that they do. And again, she confirmed that, I'm sorry, ma'am, we cannot find the heartbeat. In that moment, I didn't know what to think. And I asked the question, I don't understand, you can't find the heartbeat. Is it because it's not visible? You can't see it? You need to operate? No. And she said the words of, we've lost the baby. And to me, that didn't make sense. What do you mean? Everything was fine. Everything was progressing well. We had an appointment booked in for next week, Monday, to come back for our checks, to ensure that everything is fine. It was so devastating, because this is not the plan. This was not the plan, I remember being told that I had on the week after that, my family was telling me that we had planned a surprise baby shower. There was all these presents and everything, because we thought it's the 7th hour. What's the worst that could happen? It's unexpected. It's never happened in our family. So it was an unusual thing to come across. And I think for all of us, we didn't know how to react to it or respond. So you can imagine how the family felt. And now that it had happened to me, I started researching on information, finding out that 1 in 5 women go through it. 14 babies are lost every minute within the NHS. Those factors and statistics, I was like, why is it happening? And being from a Black community, I was not allowed to talk about it. I was told to be silent. And that was painful, because I'm thinking, I'm going through something. I need to share my story, of what I'm going through. I've lost something important to me. What do you mean I can't talk about it? And where I come from, they say, well, you're making yourself have bad luck if you talk about it, because it was a baby that was born after a certain time, 6 months. There has to be a registered death, I had to go through that process, to sign paperwork, to confirm I'm the mother, to confirm he's the father, and I'm bearing a child that I didn't even get to nurse, we are bearing a child that we didn't have, the moments that you create in your mind, you always have a vision that this is going to turn up a certain way, and it doesn't happen that way. So it affected me and my family, but most importantly, my relationship with my husband. You can imagine the bedroom is not the same, the sexual health is not the same, because I've lost my confidence. I'm fearful of that happening again. To say, what if it happens again? Or if you get pregnant too quickly and we're not ready, But I'm thankful, I'm from a Christian background. I'm so grateful for the prayers and support I really received. And there's a charity that I've been working with since that happened. This month, I'm working with SANS. I'm doing my 100K marathon that I'm doing with walk, in support of the support that I received from them, just to appreciate the support that's out there to help families. But if it wasn't for my experience, I wouldn't have had from it SANS. I wouldn't have come across that experience. I've built a family with people that I've never thought I would, sit on a table with. And I think God works in amazing ways, which I can't describe how I got here. Because when I was in that place, I was suicidal. I thought God had forgotten me. I thought from everything, you start coaching to say, but Lord, I did this in the house of the Lord. I did this and this. And this one thing, this one thing that I was looking forward to, you had to take it away from me. But what I'm thankful for is I remember the story of Job, in the Bible. He lost everything, and who am I? Who am I to stand there and say, I don't deserve it? It's a test that I had to go through to give a testimony. A year later, we were blessed with a beautiful young boy called Levi. He's a boy again called Omari. He's thriving, he's 7 months. But then that wasn't the story in 2016, God had a purpose. God had a purpose in our lives, God had a purpose in our marriage. We had to go through counseling. It wasn't within the church, it was outside of church through SANS, a well-known charity in the UK, for me to get that help that I needed, for me to talk to that person that has probably experienced the same unfortunate circumstances, but they were able to relate to me, because within my household, within my usual connection and network, I couldn't talk about it. I lost friends. I lost, things that I thought were the norm for me. And it took a lot of support for me to get back to the place that I am today. So this is my story as Sharon Manatsa. Thank you for listening.
Amen.
Oh,
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, that's true. That's really powerful.
So much.
I do apologize, guys. I've got my kids in the background. I've tried to sort of like give them to somebody, but they're not used to being around people. So do this with them.
Well,
I apologize.
That's
all
totally
right.
Yeah, honestly.
So while you're talking, you might as well just introduce yourself.
So my name is Chelsea. Chelsea Chipatton, but now Mwale because I'm married. And in 2017, I was pregnant with my little boy. I got to about 7 months and I went into premature labor. I was at work, but something kept telling me in my spirit that something was wrong. So I ended up in hospital. Thankfully, my mother-in-law had just said that day, I'll come with you, because obviously something was going on and I could tell something was wrong. I even went to the extremes. Gianna, can you shush? I went to the extremes of seeing my midwife on that same day. And she said, everything's fine. But my spirit was telling me something was wrong. And I think it's so important as a mother to listen to your instincts, even before you hold the baby. So I ended up in hospital. I ended up giving birth to my son. But it all happened so quickly because he was really tiny and it was, an unplanned birth. He lived for 4 minutes and then he passed away. So like Sharon, I had to have him registered. We had to have a death certificate issued. I won't lie to you, it was probably one of the most difficult situations in my life, because even as they were talking me through the fact that it was too early and he had to go into NECyouth, I gave birth. And then I couldn't even look at him after I gave him birth, because I was shocked. I was in so much shock that the only person who got to see him while he was alive was my mother-in-law. By the time I came round, even after I'd given birth, they took him away, and I couldn't bring myself to look at him, because I was thinking, I'm losing this boy. This is it. And the reason why I'd lost him is because I think on the Wednesday, my waters had broken, infection had gone up into my system. So by the time we got to Friday, when I actually gave birth, it was a bit too late. Gianna, can you shush? It was a bit too late. So, we ended up losing him. He lived for 4 minutes and he lives in heaven now. And unlike Sharon and me and my husband were having friction actually around about the time that I was pregnant. Well, that actual day, we had a fight and he had gone off to his friend's bachelor party. And so we were not on good terms. So I was blaming myself and he was blaming himself. And we'd had conversations before that. If we had a miscarriage, would we stay together? Because we'd seen programs of people struggling to cope with losing their child. So the first thing I asked him when he got to the hospital, can you shush? The first thing I asked him when he got to the hospital was, are we going to stay together? Because that's all that was playing in my head, that losing a child is such a massive thing. It can take a really big toll on a relationship. And he said, I wouldn't leave you because we've lost a child. It's not your fault. Unfortunately for me, it went really left and I lost family members in the process. Just like Sharon said, culture doesn't allow you to moan. People wanted me to bury my child. I was told that I was a witch and that I had a child. You know, there's all these African stupid, it sounds really bad, but they're very, for me, they're really stupid cultural. But God is faithful. And I think I'm a testimony because while I was going through it, I you know how you normally pray and ask God, like, why me? I said to myself, God, who do I want it to happen to? If I don't want it to happen to me, I want it to happen to the next person. And I had a conversation with God. I remember having a conversation with God. I think it was a week after I'd lost my son. And I said, God, if it was your will, I understand. But the next child that you're going to allow me to get pregnant with, and it's not, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, because now as your child, I'm telling you that this is what I want to happen. So I'm telling you that I'm going to get pregnant again. And the second one, I'm not going to be allowed to take. I've allowed you to take Giovanni because you said it's too good for earth. But then these other 2 or 6 that are coming, God, they're mine. And I said, you're going to confirm my conversation with you through other people so that I know that you understand what I'm saying. And weirdly, I had 4 or 5 confirmations from different people. And these are people that I don't talk to on a daily basis. So I knew God was really speaking in my life. So throughout Gianna, I then got pregnant with Gianna not too long after I'd lost my son. And when I was pregnant with her, I had this peace because I just knew God was in control and he was going to fulfill what he had started. It in a way, it brought me and my husband together, having lost our son. So I had something that's called something like it's called a weak pelvis. Basically, my pelvis was not strong enough to hold the baby, so my water broke and I went into premature labor. So with Gianna and Raphael's pregnancies, by the way, Gianna's name means God is gracious because he was gracious in that instance. And with them, I was sort of like high risk, so I was under consultant care. But I also loved the fact that I had access to SANS because I went into a deep depression. I couldn't even wake up to go and have a bath. And my best friend had a baby, and her baby was about 2 months old. And, you know, because she wanted to be supportive, she was always around my house with the baby. And as much as it did me good, also did me, it was harmful because obviously I was constantly reminded of the fact that I went home with empty arms. And I think because culture in Zimbabwean culture, it's such a taboo to talk about children that you've lost. So I took to Facebook. I opened a group on Facebook, which I used to purge. I used to like write whatever emotion I was going through on that day. I would write it on there. And I also found support groups of people that had lost children as well. So, you know, I could relate. I could go there and read about other people's stories and not feel like I was alone. Once I opened my page and I started sharing my emotions and my feelings, I had loads of messages from different women across the world telling me about their experiences and how they'd been silenced. So they'd never had the opportunity to talk about what they went through. So as much as it's a sensitive topic, I found therapy in actually sharing. The more I talk about it, the more I healed. And the more I talk about it now it's more like, you know, he was here. So that's all I take from it. It's not really the loss. It's the fact that he came for a purpose. And possibly the purpose was to bring me and my partner together. And also for me to be able to share with other people that are going through the same thing. So that's why I decided to share today. So, and what I got from that is that God says delay does not mean denied.
That's
so just
right.
because God is delaying your blessing or delaying you being a mother or a father or you getting pregnant does not mean he's denying you. He knows the right. And within the right time, God makes everything beautiful in your life. So yeah, that's my story.
Amen.
I'm sorry, she's missing.
That's all right. Rebecca, do you want to tell us?
Okay, hi, I'm Rebecca. In 2017, I found out I was pregnant, and I had hyperemesis, so I had really intense sickness during my pregnancy. So I spent a lot of time going in and out of the early pregnancy unit, having IV fluids, coming home. It got so bad actually that I was bedbound for weeks. My mum came to stay with us because my husband was working. I had 2 older children at the time. He was trying to get those children to school and still get to work and get back to pick them up. So it was really a difficult scenario for us. So my mum came up to stay, and my sickness was really bad. I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't drink anything, no water, nothing. So I remember being really, really weak, so weak that at one point my mum had to bath me. I remember her running me a bath, and she said, "Oh, do you need to help to get in?" I said, "Oh, yeah, can you help me get in?" And I got in, and she said, "Do you need me to wash you?" And I was like, "Oh, I can do that." And I sat there and I cried because I realized that I actually couldn't physically wash myself. So at that point, I got my mom, she helped me out. And I went back into hospital. I had lost a lot of weight at this point. So I was admitted to hospital. I was about 18 weeks at that point. And I stayed in hospital for about 4 days. I was on IV fluids. I was on anti-sickness medication as well because I can't swallow tablets. So I was having a lot of anti-sickness injections just to stop me from being sick so that I wasn't losing more weight and so that the pregnancy could continue to be a healthy pregnancy, I guess. I remember on my last day at the hospital, a midwife coming to me saying to me, "Oh, do you want to hear the baby's heartbeat?" And she was really kind of nonchalant about it, like it wasn't that serious. And I was like, okay, yeah, sounds good. And she listened and she could hear a sound and she went, "Is that okay?" And she was so flippant about it that I just thought, that's kind of odd. And I was like, well, if you say it's okay, then yeah, I guess it's okay. And I went home. I was still really sick. So they were meant to give me anti-sickness and I hadn't had the last dose that I should have had in the hospital. So the idea was that I kept on top of it so that the nausea didn't come back and the sickness didn't come back. But I requested medication because I started to feel sick and I was told, "Oh, well, I'm packing up your prescription anyway." So basically, take it when you get home. And I was sick before I'd got home. And it just started again. So I had another week then of being really ill. But I had my 20-week scan coming up. So I was sick, but I was kind of looking forward to it. And I'd spoken to my husband and said, after this scan, we need to go to the hospital again because the sickness is really bad again. So that was the plan. The plan was we have the scan, and then we go straight from the hospital that we were having a scan at to another hospital with the maternity unit. So we got to our scan, and like Sharon, they said to me, I can't find a heartbeat. And I think what I found really stressful is that at every step of the way, because I'd been so sick, everyone kept saying to me, "Oh, that's a really good sign. Sickness is a really good thing. Sick mum, healthy baby." Yeah. And they told me that all the time. I even walked into that scan with a bag, and the sonographer said to me, "Oh, have you been quite sick?" And I couldn't speak because I was so sick. I couldn't say anything. I was producing a lot more saliva than I should, so I was spitting a lot and I couldn't actually say anything. So I was kind of nodding along with my bag, and she even said to me, "Oh, that's normally a really good sign." And then it turned so quickly from that to her saying to me, I can't find a heartbeat, let me just call somebody else in. She called somebody else in. They had a look and said, "Yeah, we're really sorry, we can't find a heartbeat." And I just remember wailing. Like I couldn't speak, but I could wail, and I just wailed. And I think it was hard then as well to have to walk back out through the waiting room to all these expectant mothers who were going to have their scans, and the majority of whom were going to be told, "Oh, everything's wonderful, baby's progressing really well." And they were there calling up the next hospital to say, "She's coming, but actually it's not for the hyperemesis this time." And then when I arrived at the next hospital, we met a midwife that we know, and she'd seen me come in and out. It's a lady from church, and she'd seen me a few times, and she said, "Oh, is it the same thing again?" And I just thought, I felt heavy. And I remember my husband talking to her, like going to the side with her and explaining to her the news that we just had. And she just hugged me, and I just cried and cried, and she hugged me and she took me through to what is quite obviously a designated room for people who've lost babies. But you know what, the staff are amazing there. Again, like Sharon, I was saying, you know, well, I wasn't really saying, I was typing on my phone because I still couldn't speak. You know, what happens now? What do I do? Because I'm carrying around a baby that is not alive. What happens? And she just said, let's get the sickness under control and we'll talk about that after. Let's just stop you from being sick and we'll go from there. So this was the Thursday. I was told that I could stay because I was so unwell. They said, what we can do is we can keep giving you anti-sickness medication. We can put you on an IV. We can try and control the sickness. Once that's under control, then we'll work on what happens next. So they give you in my case anyway, I was given a pessary, and then I had to be given another pessary at midnight, Saturday into Sunday. That was the next time, because it has to be within a certain time frame. And then once you have the second pessary, your labour has to start within a certain amount of time. Otherwise, you kind of have to start the process all over again. My husband was allowed to stay with me, and my mum was actually allowed to stay as well. So they really accommodated all of us in this one big room. And then, yes, I had the pessary Saturday night, and just before 2 a.m, I gave birth. It was a really, really quick process, but really painful. And I think it was hard because I was sad and I was angry, and I was saying to my husband, again, texting him, saying, why is God letting this happen to me? Why is it that I've been so sick for so long, and then at the end of it, I don't even get the prize that you're supposed to get? Like, I've been working, being sick, and then even after all of that, there's still nothing. There's still no positive outcome for me. And I was really, really broken, actually. And I remember just my mum crying, and I was crying, and it was just such a sad time. So I gave birth, and I couldn't look at the baby because I just was too sad at the time. And also, strangely, even though I knew he couldn't see me, I felt like I don't want him to meet me like this. I was really unwell. I hadn't really looked after myself because I couldn't, and I just felt like I looked, I don't know, disgusting. And I thought, I don't want this to be how I meet him. I need to have a shower, and I need to get dressed, and things that are really irrelevant. So I waited. So he was taken away, and I was able to sleep for a bit. I'd had morphine, so it was a really tricky night. Sorry, people are racing up my road. I'd had morphine, so I was like itching. I was having a bad reaction to that as well. I was waking up shouting at my mom, and it was quite a saga. The thing is as well, after you give birth, hyperemesis stopped straight away. So as soon as I'd given birth, the sickness stopped, and I was able to eat again. And I thought, I'm really thirsty, actually. And I was drinking loads and then being sick because my stomach had shrunk so much I couldn't even manage to have the drink that I was having, and I didn't really know how to pace myself. But the next day I did meet him. They brought him in a basket, and they'd put him in clothes, and he had a little hat on, and I just remember looking at him thinking, he's just not ready. Like, he's just not ready to be here at all. And I wasn't able to register him as being alive or dead, actually, because I was before the 24 weeks gestation. So the hospital gave me a memory box, which is provided by a company called For Lewis. And they create memory boxes for people who go through infant loss. And in that, there was just like a little scroll that they'd made, and it's like an acknowledgement of life to say that your baby existed. Even if you didn't meet them, even if nobody met them, your baby was here at some point. So we had the acknowledgement of life and loads of other little things that are in there. And then, about 6 weeks later, we had our funeral. And even that it's really another experience altogether, because you get to a stage where, not that you're not grieving anymore, but you kind of are not crying yourself to sleep anymore. And then you have a funeral, and that's something else again. And I remember the coffin was so small that they had to move the 2 wooden planks together just to fit it on top so that it didn't fall in. So it's a really tricky time, and I felt really angry with God for a really long time. And I think I'd be lying if I said that that was easy to get over, and that automatically I thought, oh, everything happens for a reason. And a lot of people will tell you a lot of really cliche things as well, that you think, why are you saying that? Or, you know, oh, at least you've got other children. And they try to say things that try to lessen the impact of what you're going through, but actually it's really hard and it's really sad, and it doesn't matter what stage you're at when it happens. It's your child, and you grieve for that child, and it's a really difficult situation to go through. And I think I'm quite fortunate that I had a really good support network. I had really good family and really good friends around who you know, I was able to talk to. And I'm grateful for scenarios like this where we can be open about things like this, because I do think it's taboo. And I do think so often you're told, oh, wait till 12 weeks, you know, don't tell anybody that you're pregnant, because what if something happens? And what if something happens? You know, it's not your fault if something happens. It's very sad. So I think it's really great that we can be here to try and lift some of that stigma. But yes, that is my story in somewhat of a nutshell.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deborah.
Hi guys, my name is Deborah. So my story is 3 years ago. We had just been married. We got married 2017 September, so we got pregnant very early. So about 2 months time I was already pregnant. So in April 2018, my pregnancy was fairly okay, like I wasn't ill or anything, but also I didn't know anything because it was my first time being pregnant, so I didn't know what pregnancy should feel like. So even if anything had gone wrong, I wouldn't have known like something is going wrong. So all the scans were fine, you know, everything was like generally okay. We had just gone for a scan a couple of weeks previously, and we'd just been told that we had the week I had the miscarriage, we were supposed to have the 20-week scan where we would know the sex of the baby on the Thursday. So this happened Tuesday night. So basically what happened on the Monday, I had actually been working. I'm a social worker, so I do a lot of visits. And because I work with children who live out of the county that I live in, I had to travel out of county a lot. So that day I actually woke up and I was feeling pain, but I was just like, well, that's just pregnancy, right? You know, you do feel a little pain here and there. So I just went to work, did what I had to do, and then I drove to do a visit in another town, came back, and then I drove to London and came back. I actually didn't know at that time I was already in labor, like preterm labor. So I drove to London. I was in so much pain, but I was just winging it. I think I'm just one of those people who just get on with things. So I was just getting on with it. I was like, you know what, so I just went to London, did a visit. On my way back, I remember feeling like I need to pee quite a lot. So I stopped at the services near home, like near Oxford. And I remember walking from the car inside to use the toilet, and this woman was just staring at me, and I didn't understand why she was looking at me that funny. But then as I was walking past, there was this mirror, and as I looked, I realized I'm actually walking really funny. And I was like, I was in pain, but again, if you've never been pregnant, you don't know, right? So I just walked in and I went to use the toilet. I called my husband and I said, we are not cooking today, so I'm just gonna bring some takeaway. So I got him some stuff. I got myself some KFC. I drove home. The following morning was a Tuesday. I woke up and I couldn't walk. Literally, I couldn't walk. I tried to go to the toilet and I was limping. So I just rang my manager and I said, I can't come into work. She said, that's absolutely fine. We just stayed home the whole day. And my husband, I don't know if it was just maybe something telling him, but he also called in sick. So he stayed at home with me. So I was literally like eating like crazy. And we were watching Person of Interest. Like I was just doing my thing. Knowing that, okay, maybe it's just a bit of pain tomorrow, I'll be okay. But around like 8-9 p.m., the pain was now 10. So it was now coming, like you feel pain for like 5 seconds and then it goes. comes back again, it goes. So I was like, I don't know what this pain is. So I called my friend and I said, this is how I'm feeling, is normal. She was like, Des, that's not normal. You need to call 111. So I called 111. The lady stayed with me over the phone for like nearly half an hour. She would ask me questions and then go back, ask, and then come back and then ask. So she just came back and she was like, I'm going to call the paramedics now. And I was like, okay. So the paramedics came. I remember they literally sat on the carpet. They asked me if I was bleeding. I said no. And they just took a lot of, they asked me a lot of questions. And they said, we're not really trained to do like maternity stuff. So we're going to call the maternity assessment unit. So they rang the maternity assessment unit and were like, well, she's not bleeding and, just leave her. And, if the pain comes again, then ring us. So the paramedics left me. I could still see them through the window when this sharp pain just came. And I just jumped off the bed and I said to my husband, we're going to the hospital now. So at that time, we actually lived 5 minutes drive from the hospital. So we just drove to the maternity assessment unit. I rang them before. I said, I'm coming now. They said, that's fine, come. I got there and the pain was now intense. And, again, being in the waiting room with other pregnant people who were there, I think people thought I was crazy. I was in so much pain. So I went to the toilet. And when I used the toilet, that's when I saw some blood in the urine. That's when I was like, a bit. So they came and they put me in a room, assessed me, everything. She was like, oh, there's a heartbeat. Great. I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. And she was like, how many weeks? I was like, 20 weeks. And they said, okay, that's fine. There was like, there's a heartbeat, your blood, your heartbeat, your obs are fine, and there's a heartbeat on the baby, so that's good. I was like, oh, good. So I thought they would just say it's a UTI and you can go home, because I was actually saying to my husband, oh, I got this for work tomorrow. I need to finish this report. I need to do this. I need to do that. Like I was actually thinking about work tomorrow. And so one of the consultants came in and he just said, I need to just take some, so they had to use the speculum to check things and whatever. So he just took some fluids and then he was just like, oh, Debs, there's a pink fluid in the speculum. And I said, and this fluid is coming from around the baby. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? Is it a good thing? And he was like, no, it's not a good thing. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he was like, I need to get a second opinion. So he went and got somebody else. And she came in and she also checked, and then she was like, okay, let me scan you. So they just, started scanning me. So she actually turned the screen towards me and she was like, okay, so Debs, this is what's happening. You're actually in labor. And what's actually happening is that the baby's legs have already started coming out. So I could see on the scan, I could see the legs like hanging out. So my membranes had ruptured and I had gone into preterm labor. And the worst thing was that I had infection around the placenta. So they said you have infection around the placenta, which is quite bad, and you're also bleeding. So they were like, in other circumstances, what we would do is we would kill the infection with antibiotics. We'll try to give you medication and, get rid of the infection and would admit you in hospital, whatever. But because the legs are already coming out, the membranes have ruptured and they're bleeding, and also there's infection, there's nothing we can do now. We're just going to let the baby come out and the baby is going to die, unfortunately. So I said, okay, what if the baby comes out alive? And they said, your baby is under 24 weeks. He was only 20. They were like, we're going to let the baby die. And I was like, no, you didn't hear me. I said, if the baby comes out alive, they were like, we have to let the baby die. This is, and I said, okay. So I was like, okay, that's fine. Let's just get on with it. And she just looked at me. She was like, no, she hasn't processed this yet. So they just said, we'll leave you. They just said, we'll give you a few minutes. So they just closed the door. And as soon as they left the room, I remember screaming. I think everybody in the neighborhood could hear there's someone in the hospital screaming. Like I screamed that loud and I couldn't believe it. So many things went through my mind and I was like, what the hell is going on? And so they came back after a good 5-10 minutes. They were like, okay, we're just going to put a cannula in because as soon as you deliver, we're going to hit you with antibiotics because we don't want the infection to start traveling up because you may actually end up dying yourself because it's quite bad. So I said, okay. They went to the delivery room and they were like, it should be fairly quick because the baby is still a very tiny size. It will be painful, but very quick. But if you haven't gone into labor by 3 in the morning, we're going to put you on a drip. So I said, okay, that's fine. They came, I went into labor and they did put me on the drip. And obviously, to fast forward the whole process, it was the most painful experience I've ever had. And what made it more painful was that I was going through pain for what? Like, like, why am I going through this? And I remember at some point, like, I was just, you when you're giving birth, it's a very ugly experience. You're sweaty, you don't care, basically. And I was just like sweaty, and I was literally asking them to just pour water on me. I was just feeling hot and all. And I remember crying. I was like, God, I didn't even say God. I was like, Jesus, where are you? Like, why are you letting me go through this? For what? And I was just thinking, if you're in labor and you're feeling so much pain, at the end I'm going to be holding my baby. But I knew my baby was going to die. And the baby, indeed the legs came out first. And I remember, feeling the baby then, because of the shock, I felt him dying. Because he was flapping and then he just died. So by the time he came out, he was already dead. And I don't know, I remember saying to God, I don't know if it's better that he came out dead, or I don't know if it would have been better if he came out alive. At least I would have had a moment with him. I don't know. But he came out dead. And I remember they asked you, do you want us to put him in a box or do you want us to put him in a basket? And I said a basket would be nice. They dressed him up. They put him there. I refused to hold him. My husband held him while he was still warm, and then they just put him in the basket, dressed him, and it was the worst time of my life. I'm not gonna lie, it was so dark. And there's also shame, because I was so ashamed of myself. I felt like I let myself down. I felt like I let my body down. I felt like I let my husband down, my family down. I felt like I let everybody down, because I had been to work the previous day on the Monday, and now it's like, so where's the belly? Do you know what I mean? Like, where's the baby? You had a belly and now the baby's gone. It was the worst. But for me, what made it better for me, the experience, was that I had the best care while I was there. There's a bereavement suite at our hospital here, so they put me in a bereavement suite. It was even nicer than our house. I was like, Maxwell, I'm not leaving this hospital. Like, they allowed to stay there. We had visitors coming in. Like, my church was very supportive. My family was very supportive. We stayed there for like a whole week. I was literally wheeled into the observation ward, and I was given 4 drips straight after, because the infection was really bad, and apparently my blood pressure just shot up. After the 4 drips, that's when I went into the bereavement suite, and it was just I think they give you that tablet to stop the milk coming out, but after 3 days my milk started coming out, and I remember it just came out for like a few seconds and then it stopped, and it never happened after that. But it was that thing of like, oh my gosh, the milk. And then, but there's no baby, and you have the whole postpartum, the belly is sagging, you have the swollen feet, you have all that, the weight gain, everything that you had when you're pregnant, expecting a baby, like you still have that, but you have no baby to show for it. And for us, we didn't opt for the private burial because it was just too much for us. So even though we are able to see him every day, they would bring him to me every day to spend the day with him. I'd see him and they'll take him back and take him back while I was in the hospital. But I just opted for the mass burial. And now I regret doing that, because I wish I actually gave him a private burial, because the mass burial, when we went for the funeral that day, he was buried with like 8 other babies. And also they were like, because he was under 24 weeks, he wasn't a viable child. So he's not registered anywhere, like basically never existed, because there was no death certificate, nothing. He was just whatever, he just lost the baby and that's it. And it pained me a lot, because I was like, actually he was born. Yeah, I saw him. He really looked like my husband. I held him. I was like, I carried him. I had a relationship with him, and now you're telling me that he can't even be registered. And when we went for the funeral, I remember just looking into the box. There was like 8 babies in one, just to see how common it is for people to lose babies. And it was just, I just felt like I was a statistic. I felt like I was just, you know what I mean? And then you have the anxiety that comes as well. You also have the stress. Sons came through, like Sharon was saying, they're amazing. It's an amazing charity. And I would go to the gravesite a lot after he died, and then I took a few months off work, which was really great. But yeah, for those who are experiencing it, What I've always said when I've shared my story is that your experience is real. Like, don't let anybody tell you that it never happened. Miscarriage is like is a very lonely grief, because as the mother, you are the one who carried the child, so you have the relationship with him even more than your husband, because you carry the baby. And you felt him kicking or her kicking, you felt the baby, you felt all the emotions, the weight gain, the hormones, everything, you felt it. And then now the baby dies. No one else had a relationship with that child but you. So it feels very lonely sometimes. It's a very lonely grief, but it happened. And for those who didn't want to have children after, or those who couldn't have children after, it doesn't take away the fact that you're actually a mother. You carried a child. It doesn't matter whether it was for a week or 2 or 3 or for full term or 20 weeks like me, or for some who shared earlier that it was, way later in the pregnancy. You're still a mother. Like, no one can take that away from you. So that's what I can just say that's my story in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, ladies, for sharing. And we are joined by Dr. Stacey. Thank you, Dr. Stacey, for joining us. We've just had the women's testimonies, and gosh, I'm lost for words with what you guys have gone through. I don't have a child of myself as of yet, but I cannot even begin to imagine how you guys went through this. And I really truly thank you for coming on and sharing your stories. And hopefully that somebody out there listening can see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And like Deb say, that your grief is valid, and you should be able to grieve the loss that you've had. So just moving on, we've got some questions that we wanted to ask you ladies, and feel free to pass it on if you're not comfortable to talk about it. But we wanted to know, so I know some of you have shared that it was mostly later on, but for a new person who hasn't experienced it from the first time, can you sort of like detect what's happening? If you're having a miscarriage, can you detect it, and how can you react? Is there, I don't know, a sign or any way that you can sort of like try and get to the hospital quicker? Is there anything like that?
It's a difficult question to answer. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer because each person's experience is different. When I woke up with the bleed, I just thought it was just pre-labor, that baby wants to come early. I remember feeling like the period pain, like I mentioned, where my lower back is painful and I'm having cramps. And I just associated that with just baby wanting to come early. You can never know that baby's not gonna make it, if that makes sense. From what Deb said, that and Rebecca was saying that the baby was in the 20-week format. I've had testimonies of people giving birth a 21-week baby, and they treat them in NECyouth to the point that they make it into life as a premature baby. So it can't be defined as, right, if you notice this, then this is what's going to follow on. All my pregnancy, I didn't have blood pressure issues, but that morning when I woke up with a bleed, I was told I had, preeclampsia. That just happened all of a sudden. And preeclampsia is something associated with pregnant women. When you give birth, it goes away. So it's quite difficult. But what I've learned since I've had the other 2 children is I've become more aware of changes with my body. And I wasn't afraid to pick up the phone if I'm not sure. So that's what changed for me. Like Deb saying, because when you're first time pregnancy, you don't know if you're meant to react about this. And some midwives, I remember my midwife telling me, oh, you're a first time mom, you always panic. Such sentiments that you think, no, I don't know how to feel if I'm expecting. So I hope I'm helping someone there, that you just need to know your body will tell you something is not right, and don't be afraid to pick up the phone or force yourself to go to the hospital, because I find that NHS 11 and paramedics unfortunately do not have that training. And I think the government needs to work hard to sort of make sure that their staff overall within the healthcare know how to deal with people, particularly women who are expecting, so to know how to respond to them. So like what Deb was saying, half an hour on the phone, that shouldn't happen. You know, something should have happened quicker to say, okay, something is going on, you need to go to your, you know, hospital to get checked by the midwives there. So it's just knowing when your body is not responding a certain way. Your body will tell you that something is not right, and don't be afraid to go and see your GP, to go and see your midwife, or to talk to someone that's of that expertise. So that's what I can say from my experience.
I'll just say, for me, I had what is classed as a miscarriage. So it was not detected until I had a scan. So I couldn't have done anything to change the outcome. I couldn't have moved faster or slower or anything like that. It's just that was what was going to happen. So I didn't experience any bleeding. I didn't experience any discomfort. I didn't have any of that. Even on the morning of the scan, I said to my mum, oh, I can feel baby moving. And I think this, for me, potentially, the issues I was having with sickness were causing me stomach issues as well. So what I was feeling was probably actually like griping feelings, because I was just so sick. So it's hard to say whether you can detect it or not. I think it really does differ from person to person. Some people will have pain, some people won't have pain. I didn't have any. There will be different signs and symptoms for different people, but I think that it's important to know that in the case of miscarriage, you can't do anything. Like, you can't yourself stop that from happening.
Yeah. I was also going to say quickly, to add on what Rebecca and Sharon just said as well, is that it's actually okay to ask your midwife to ask your midwife to ask for second opinion. Because for the longest time, I had seen my midwife a week or two before, and I told her I was feeling some funny pains, but she just dismissed it as pelvic ghetto pain, because I had pelvic ghetto pain from really like early weeks in my pregnancy. So sometimes it's actually okay, because with my second pregnancy, I had 2 months after my miscarriage, I got pregnant. And with that one, I then made sure like I was there, like I was running and doing everything. But it's okay, because I just felt, what if at that time I challenged my midwife, okay, can you at least refer me to the gynecologist or something? Because I think it's when you're 16 and under, they can refer you to gyna, and then 16 weeks after that, you can then just go straight to MAU. I can't remember, but just check. But you can ask your midwife, you know, politely that, okay, can you just check? Because unfortunately for some, our instincts are not always, because for me, I had zero instincts. Like when I was feeling that pain, I was like, that's pregnancy. I have heard you can feel pain. I've heard you can have this. And because I thought I have pelvic ghetto pain, I just thought it's probably getting worse because I'm getting bigger. Because at 20 weeks, I was really big. I looked like someone is about to pop, you know. So I just thought maybe it's just me being big, you know what I mean? But I was actually in labor for a whole day, and I didn't know, and I was just at home. So if you're not sure, just ask. And if you feel something that you're not sure of, you just ring them. Just ring your midwife, just ring your GP, and just say, I feel this, but I'm not sure if it's normal. Can I just come and get checked? And that's absolutely fine to do that. Like and with GPs, they do prioritize pregnant women, because whenever I'd ring, they always saw me on the very day. They didn't give me following day. They always say, come even if it's later on in the day. So please, if you're not sure, just ask. Like, don't wait.
Stacey, do you have anything you want to add?
I think all of those are really good points. Definitely, if you're unsure of anything, we're always there. The hospital is staffed 24/7, so we can always see you whenever you're concerned. The only thing that I would add is, particularly with first trimester miscarriages and a lot of second trimester miscarriages, there's nothing that we can do to prevent them. So even if you do, I mean, never think, oh, if I'd called earlier, maybe the outcome would have been different. In all likelihood, it wouldn't have. That's just the sad reality of miscarriages. So this is more for personal reassurance that you're going to see us, really. And actually, for your earlier question about symptoms, The most common symptoms of the first trimester miscarriage are pain and bleeding. I think roughly about 1 in 4 women will have some degree of bleeding in their pregnancy and go on to still have a live birth. But if you are getting really heavy bleeding, it's associated with clots, with severe pain, then that's a sign that something a little bit more serious is going on. And so you should definitely come up and get checked out at that point. Second trimester miscarriages don't tend to present so much with bleeding. They can do, but it tends to be more pain, and sometimes your waters will break early as well. And if you have started feeling movements and then all of a sudden you're not feeling movements, again, that's a sign that something serious is going on, and you should come up and get checked out.
And I guess this question will go to Stacey as well to start with. So, with miscarriages, is there any I've just heard that the older you get, the more the higher the chances of you having a miscarriage. Is that true? And is there any statistics, or from whatever you experience on a daily basis, what is the relationship between increase in age and the likelihood of you actually having a miscarriage?
Okay. Yes, that is true. So the fertility clock is definitely true. The best time to have a baby is in your 20s. If you have a baby between 20 and 25, your chance of miscarriage is about 11%. Once you get above the age of 30, it's still pretty good. Between 30 and 35, your risk of miscarriage is 15%. Above 35 is where it really starts to jump. So between 35 and 40, your risk is 25% of having a miscarriage. Between 40 and 45, it can be as high as 50%, and above 45, it can be as high as 90%. So really, if you do want to have babies, the earlier you make plans to do so, the better. The reason for that is twofold. First of all, the number of eggs you have decreases, and also your egg quality decreases. So women are born, or girls, should I say, are born with all the eggs that they will ever have. Scientists reckon that we're born with about 1 million eggs, but we start to lose them as soon as we're born, to the point that when we get to puberty, we might only have about 400,000 left. And we lose maybe up to 1,000 each month with each cycle. Only one of the eggs becomes dominant, and that's what gets released when you ovulate, but all the rest of the eggs that started developing at that time just get absorbed back into the body, and they're lost now. Now, when you're born, the eggs that you're born with are immature, so they're not fully developed, and that's what's happening each month during your monthly cycle. A group of eggs start developing, and in order for them to do that, they have to replicate all their DNA and chromosomes. And that process can have errors in it, and the errors become more frequent the older you get. So in your 20s, roughly 70-80% of your eggs will have normal chromosomes, but in your 40s, roughly only about 10% of your eggs will have normal chromosomes. And we know that chromosomal abnormalities are responsible for the majority of miscarriages, and that's why your risk of miscarriage increases the older that you get.
Okay. All right.
So our next question is how did the pregnancy affect your relationships with your husband, if any at all?
I think being sick made me realize that he was a really good dad and that he was a good husband. I think I spent so much time in bed, and everything still carried on. Like the house was still ticking over, the kids were still clean, they were still going to school, they were still being fed. He was still earning money somehow. So I think it made me look at him in a different light, because I just thought, actually, this he's all right, you know. He's not doing too badly, because he's kind of running the show and I'm in bed doing nothing. And then afterwards, after having the miscarriage, I think I don't think it brought us closer together, but I think that because of the way that I was now looking at him, because he'd been kind of doing things, I think I had this different kind of feeling towards him. And I think sometimes men get left out of the kind of miscarriage conversation because we assume that, you know, we carry all of the grief and everything is us, but actually it can be really difficult for them. So I think I was trying to, you know, look for signs to say, you know, is he okay? Is he not okay? Which he had his moments. But overall, I think in terms of our relationship, I think we were in a really good place, actually. And I think it's sad that it can have the opposite effect on people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Rebecca said as well. Sadly, husbands do get left out quite a lot, because even with a pregnancy, when you say go to church, people are like, make sure you look after her, make sure she's eating well, make sure she's doing this. But no one is also realizing that he also needs, you know, that attention as well. He also needs to be acknowledged. So sometimes with women, because, you know, with the hormones and just being pregnant, we change it. You know, sometimes you actually start not liking your body because you feel like you're fat now. So it may affect your sex life together. And it may affect, you know, the husband as well. Say if they really want to be intimate with you and they're like, oh my gosh, go away. Like, I actually feel hot. Like I'm bloated. Like I'm constipated. Like that. So they do get affected. And also with miscarriages, I think what between us, it was the I wasn't very ready to, you know, resume sex quite early, because to me I associated sex with baby making, and then babies die. Like that was me. Like I was like, I don't want to get because the baby will die. That was what I was just thinking. So even though, like, you know, he was really trying to be like intimate and all, I was just like, oh my gosh, like I was really dreading. Like I dreaded bedtime or any time that would leave us in a situation where we have to be intimate, because I'd be like, oh my God, it's going to touch me, isn't he? And then I'm trying to do things or like trying to do other things and to distract that. It does affect. And also, you know, sometimes as the woman, you feel like maybe he doesn't understand as much. You're like, oh, you don't understand what I'm going through. You don't understand how I. Sometimes they do understand, sometimes they don't, you know, sometimes they do. But I think what's most important for those who are supporting us, people who've gone through miscarriages, think about both the mother and the husband as well. Don't leave the husband. I remember, like, when I was in hospital, when people would come, they would almost like push him away, like, oh my gosh, you know, they'll sit around my bed and then he's just there, and then he would just go for a walk or something, because everybody's like, oh my gosh, yes. And then he's just there. And I was like, it should have been me and him sitting next to each other, and then everybody like embracing us. But I think that's, you know, I don't think people did it in a malicious way, not at all. It's just that just thinking of the mom straight away. But actually, the husband was there during the baby making process. They were there during the. They've been there the whole time. Yeah. Don't leave them out. They're also very important, and they also do feel hurt. They also go through their own trauma from that. Them seeing you in that state and also losing a baby, it doesn't just affect you as the mom or the pregnant. It also affects them in a way. So remember them.
Yeah. I mean, following up with that, like, I wonder what type of conversations you guys had with your husbands, you know, around it, or did you sort of like avoid that type of a topic, or did you handle it head on with them? How did you communicate with your husbands, like during and after?
I went straight in. I remember just being like, why are you not crying? Because he wasn't crying. I never saw him crying. And that affected me a lot, because I was like, oh my gosh, this guy, what if he's actually feeling suicide? I don't know. What if he's like really depressed? I don't know. So I remember asking him one day, and I said, Maxwell, why are you not crying? And then it's like, Debs, I've already cried. Like, I did cry. It's fine. Like, it's trying to be for me. But we openly talked about it. I asked him how he felt. He asked me how I felt. And I constantly asked him, why did this happen to us? And I think I'm very blessed, like with a very prayerful husband. Like my husband prays about anything and everything, you know, he prays for everything. And I remember just saying to him, you know, why did this happen to us? And he said, I always say this every time I talk about this. It was like, God is too kind to make a mistake. And he was like, this is not a mistake, what has happened. God has a reason for allowing it to happen. And that comforted me in so many ways, because I was blaming myself for what happened. I used to eat a lot of KFC during my pregnancy. I was like, oh my God, it's because I was eating a lot of KFC. I may have killed him. I may have done that, despite the doctors telling me it wasn't your fault. I was literally, he just comforted me by those words, like, God is too kind to make a mistake. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so true. And I held on to those words for the longest time. And he took a month off work. and I took 2 weeks of work. So we spent a lot of that time together. We talked about it indeed like a lot, and we went away. Our church paid for us to go away for like a couples retreat. They paid for us, so we spent that weekend just going through that and talking about it. We went away like small holidays and just talked about it. I think what I would encourage other couples, as difficult as it can be, please try to talk about it openly, because if you sweep it under the carpet, maybe your husband isn't even affected by it more than you are, or maybe you are affected more than he is. So talking about it, it also helps you realize where your other half is, and it helps you to know how you can support them as well. So I knew how to support my husband. He knew how to support me as well. But please just try the best to just talk about it and not talk to other people, ignoring each other. Like talk to each other first before you bring in other people. And counseling is really good as well. You want to access that. But at the end of the day, you come back and you face each other as well. So you need to talk about it, because it will be that elephant in the room. After we left the hospital, we came back and we're like, I left here pregnant and now, this. So I cried a lot, I talked a lot. And I think that really helped, because now we do talk about it here and there, but it's more like now, oh my goodness, remember we went through that, It's not like now, 3 years later, we're not trying to then address it. We already talked about it and addressed it, so that helped.
I've got my husband here. He probably can share how he found the experience himself, just to give a men's perspective.
Yeah, that would be good. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I've been following what's happening on the chat on YouTube in the next room, trying to man the kids. But yeah, I just wanted to say, you can imagine the first time Sharon told me that she was pregnant, I was excited. It's the best feeling ever, that one, you can ever have as a husband, as a father, dad to be, super excited about it. I never imagined that my first experience as a parent or as a father would be me actually bearing my child. No one ever teaches you that. No one ever teaches you how to prepare for that. No one ever prepares you for that. So it was quite an experience whereby I had to be strong, not only for myself, but I also had to be strong for my wife, because in it all, as a husband, even after when Sharon gave birth to the kids that we have now, nobody ever thinks of the husband. Nobody ever worries about how you're coping or what's happening, because the attention is on the mother. The mother is the one that was carrying the child. The mother is the one that's nursing the child. The mother is the one that's dealing with the feeling. But what about the husband? It's not normal. I did not marry someone, or I did not choose to be with someone that then loses a child, or goes through what we are going through, or that went through what we went through, because it's not normal. You expect to be a father, you expect to be a dad, you're telling your friends about everything that you're expecting to be a dad, you're doing A, B, C, and D, you're allowed on social media, you're sharing pictures, you and your wife have gone out, baby preparations and everything. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is the experience woke me up. I can certainly say that was what actually glued us together. My wife and I, because our relationship as newlyweds, that if you have family around you as newlyweds, you're experiencing certain things, either my wife's side or my side of the family. They expect you to do certain things. They expect you to say certain things. They expect you to act in a certain way. That time in particular, whereby we were faced with the experience where Sharon went through, I think I remember Rebecca was talking about being sick all the way. We are musicians. we had a project that was going on, and we were leading the project. Leading the project meant that we had to lead exemplar. Every time we'd be late to rehearsals or to shoots and everything, nobody would understand. We became a laughing stock. We were made an example of in front of people because there was no amount of explaining what we are going through that anyone could understand, could walk through, because they've never been through it. They don't understand it. So going through that, I remember my wife was sick all the way through. I am proud to say I cook. I cook for my family. I cook for my wife. So I took over. I would cook. I would make meals. She's a community mental health nurse by profession. So sometimes I would sort of like say I'm working nights. So when I'm home, when she's away, I make some meals, because I know that when someone is pregnant, sometimes they don't want to be in the room where the food is being prepared and everything and all that. I went through all that, whereby you've tried to give someone food and it's coming out. Nothing is staying. You have to explain to your family. You have to explain to people, but it's a taboo. They're saying, yo, dude, your wife is taking the piss. We've all been pregnant. She's supposed to be cooking. She's supposed to be doing this. She's supposed to be, all those things whereby you are newlyweds. You're trying to figure yourselves out, but you're going through this thing that nobody has experienced before, but they are seemingly experts because they know what it should be like. They know how marriage should be. They know how pregnancy should be like. We had a midwife that pretty much dismissed everything that Sharon said when Sharon was saying she's feeling a certain way or a certain type. I had to deal with all that. So you can imagine what Sharon was going through, everything that she was going through. I had to deal with that twice as much, because when we lost our child, Sharon couldn't handle being there, being at the burial, doing A, B, C, and D, the death certificate and all that. I had to step in. I had to be there. I buried my own child. I was there in the room when she was giving birth to a dead child. I was there, accommodating everyone. Even when they were saying you can't talk about it, it's a taboo. And I could imagine myself what many other men out there, millions or thousands of people that are out there that go through the same thing and they never get a chance to talk about it. This is something that is actually serious. And within our Black and minority ethnicity group, which we need to address, is either because of religion or cultural differences. You ladies are here. You've gone through it somewhere, somehow. There are different classes where we can place each other. And it's not about religion. It's not about beliefs. It's not about the culture. It is what it is. We got to know medically about late preeclampsia, whereby they explained what had happened. We did some research over it. It's a medical condition. We've had 2 kids after that were being managed, and we fully delivered on those kids. However, we need to talk about these things. We need to have our own groups. We need to have resources around people, around families, that will have them cope, that will give them support when they're going through such things, because they are real. It's not about you not praying enough, because we prayed. I remember praying when my wife was going through whatever she was going through. I prayed. Getting into the ambulance, I remember I have so much respect now for ambulances, because I was in that ambulance. When you see ambulances and you're thinking, oh, they're just doing that because they just want to skip the traffic and all that. I remember I have so much respect because I was in that ambulance, and it's the longest ride of my life, because that ambulance trip reminds me of the time where I went to hospital for the first time with my wife, and I was told that my son is no more, and I was dealing with everything afterwards. So every time I hear siren, I have trauma. I had to deal with trauma, because it reminds me of that. Every time anything to do with the ambulance or anything to do with the hospital comes up, I had trauma, which I had to deal with. We literally had to pack, my wife and I, because even where we were staying, every time my wife comes in from the hospital or from wherever she is, she comes into the house. She cannot bear the thought of being in the house because the only thing that she can remember is her coming off the stairs, bleeding, rushing to the hospital, and she's lost her child. So we went home. I said to my wife, I'm taking some time off from work indefinitely. You're doing the same because you were supposed to be on maternity anytime from now. We went home. We went to Zimbabwe. I think we were in Zimbabwe for nearly 4 months because we decided that we needed to press the reset button, whereby we're telling ourselves that without us actually trying to live outside the experience that we've gone through, our life is just going to be centralized and based on what we've gone through. So we had to redefine ourselves. We had to refine ourselves as a couple, as a young couple. We had to talk about the things that we had gone through. We had to talk about what we would wish for or hope for and what we'd want to do. And while we were in Zimbabwe, we just took some time out, away from anyone else. When we came back, we moved out of the house. We started a new life altogether. These are all things and all steps that I think as a community, as people that are within the community, we get to share. It's not a taboo. We get to share and you can help the next person. Just your testimony, just the things that you went through and how you managed to navigate around them could help the next person, and it would save them maybe 6 months of depression or someone taking their own lives because they can handle it, all that stuff. It is important that we stress that out and we give each other as much support as we can. I've got a lot to say. I can continue sharing and saying the experiences. I'm sure you can tell, but I will leave it here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I think it's really important to hear it from a men's perspective. Like you say, we're always rallying around the women, but thank you very much. And thank you for being strong for Sharon. And hopefully other men can also learn, from you that, you can do it together as the both of you, because after all, the baby is yours, it's two people, the mom and dad. So thank you very much for your testimony.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, because miscarriages happen in a community, from your experiences, ladies, what are some of the phrases that people have, maybe in the bid to comfort you, they literally just hit the tangent and you're like, girl, you shouldn't have even said that. What are some of the things that you've heard that you think, that even, you just, they start with that things that come out insensitive, but people in their minds, they actually think that they're helping.
You can have enough. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I've had it must have been God's will, or at least it was early, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were like, someone was like, just have one straight away, like just, and they'll literally say to Maxwell as well, just, get her basically, like just have another one. Yeah. And another one was, I had been talking to this person before, just saying it was an unplanned pregnancy, and she literally said, it's probably a good thing, you lost the baby because it wasn't planned. You probably didn't want the baby anyway. Like, what? Like, some people would say things, and then I'll say that to my friends, this is what this person said, and they'll be like, what? Oh my goodness. And I'm like, you know what, like, I can't even challenge people anymore. Like, sometimes you just don't have strength to just, like, I would just be shocked for days, and I'm like, what? How can you say something like that? But yeah, like what Sharon said, you can always have another one. It's almost like, oh, you lost your phone or you lost your pen or something, like you can always buy another one. Like it almost feels like that. You can never replace someone who's died. I've always said to people, whether you've lost your baby at 3 months pregnancy or 2 months or even 10 years, when your baby was 10 years old, like you've lost a child, it's the same pain, it's the same grief. Like, you can't say to someone like you can never know. It's like you're trying to say replace them basically. But yeah, it was very, and even, to my husband, they would literally, like, someone went to my husband and they were like, just get her, like, just, go for it, like have another one, because she won't be ready, but just, and I'm like, oh my God. And my husband would be like, can you imagine? That's what they were saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then I guess, did you want to say something? Okay.
Oh, and no, so you can continue.
All right. I guess following in on from what Deborah said, is that this one I think I would like to hear what Stacey has to say in terms of like, is there any time that you recommend that someone just wait until they try again? Is there like a time frame, or the body is just good to go from the time they've lost the first?
It's really up to the individual couple. I mean, often we tell women to wait until they've had their first period, but the only reason for that is just that it makes it easier for us to date the next pregnancy. There's actually no medical reason why you can't get pregnant straight away if you want to. Some women will find that they don't get ovulatory cycles back for a couple of months, maybe the first 3 to 6 months, by which I mean they'll be having bleeds, but they won't be ovulating those months. So even if they're trying to get pregnant, they won't be able to those months. But other women will start ovulating immediately and so can get pregnant straight away. So it really just depends on when you feel ready, both physically and also mentally. The research shows us that nearly 1 in 5 women will still be suffering PTSD 9 months down the line after a miscarriage. So, I mean, it is such a big trauma, as we've all discussed this afternoon. So you really need to feel ready. If you don't feel ready, there's no rush.
Yeah. So I guess following on that, I kind of get that most of you went through some form of a depression or another. How did you guys come out of it? How did God help you come out of it? And how did you finally get to a point where you were feeling okay about talking about it and not cry?
I can't. Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for me, it took a very long time. I found it really hard to pray. I struggled to talk to God. Every time I spoke to him, I was like, I don't understand why this has happened. Like, what have I done? I'm so upset. I'm so hurt. Like, I can't even speak to you right now. People were saying all sorts of these things to me, like what we just said, like, oh, all things work together for those who love the Lord. It must have been for the best, or it must have been God's will. And all of those things are actually really unhelpful. And I don't think they show the love of God either. I came across a text this week, or I think it's Proverbs 25 verse 20. Let me see if I just find it. It says, when someone is scripture warns that it's like someone who takes away your clothes in cold weather, or someone who pours vinegar on soda, is someone who sings songs to a heavy heart. I mean, it's okay to not try and cheer people up. They're going through something really traumatic. Just be there and listen to them. And for me, it just took a lot of time. My husband was my rock during the time. I could always speak to him about it. We were going through it together. And I think it was maybe nearly a year down the line, he just said, there was one thing that he said to me that stuck with me, and that's kind of what helped me get out of it. And it was just, Stacey, as much as you love those children, God loved them more. So we don't understand why this has happened, but our love as humans is always finite, whereas God would have loved them so much more. Imagine how much he is also hurt by this situation. He wasn't doing it to be vindictive to you. We might not understand now, but we'll understand later. And there's another lovely text as well. It's in Prophets and Kings, and I can't remember where it's found in the Bible, but there's a text about Rachel weeping for her children. And in this book, Ellen White says that, Jesus tells them, weep no more, because your children are going to come again to you. And there's this lovely imagery of when Christ comes back, he's going to bring back all the children that we've lost. And that for me is something that I've clung to since then. And that's the only thing that's been able to help me get through my situation.
So I guess I can say shout out to all the husbands then. Looks like they've really been our rocks throughout.
Yes.
Yeah, so we really do appreciate them wherever they are at the moment. And if they're watching, thank you guys for being with us through it all. Yeah. Yeah. Is there any hereditary relationship? For example, let's say if I've got a sister who's got a miscarriage, I've got a mom, does it then mean that I'm going to also have a miscarriage? How does it work? Or there's no relationship?
No, there isn't really a relationship. Some people think theoretically there could be, but as a rule, no. The majority of miscarriages happen because there's a genetic fault in the egg or the sperm. And as I said, you're born with them. Well, men produce sperm all the time as soon as they hit puberty. So it's usually just a one-off issue that's happened. You're more likely to have a successful pregnancy the next time around after your miscarriage. Even if you've had 3 miscarriages in a row, your chance of having a 4th miscarriage is 40%. So while that's high, you've still got a 60% chance of having a live birth after that. Miscarriages are usually one-off spontaneous things.
Okay.
All right.
So I guess like I can see most of you have got kids, but I can imagine that if it was, especially for Deborah, I think it was your first time when you had your miscarriage, did that put you off in having any children, and or did that kind of like, you know, push you to want to have more? How did it affect you in regards to having children?
It definitely put me off having more children. I remember just saying to my husband, I don't have any more children after this. Like it was, you know, it was too much for me. But 2 months after, I fell pregnant, and I was like, huh? I remember like saying to my husband, I'm pregnant. It's like, how did this happen? And I'm like, why are you asking me that? Like, how could you ask me that? Like I was walking and then I boom, I got pregnant. We were so shocked. We were like, what? So I was pregnant. And I think for me, this is where I think that my pregnancy was more traumatic for me more than the loss of my first baby. And I'll explain how. Basically, the moment I found out I was pregnant, that was it. I was like, already I was like in that survivor mode, whatever. I was like, he's probably going to die. So I'm going to try and do everything possible that he doesn't die. So I have a condition called incompetent cervix. That's what caused my first loss, because like my cervix opened prematurely, and that's what caused the infection and then, you know, the miscarriage. So I had already been told before that you have an incompetent cervix. So for your next pregnancies, you are always going to be under consultant care, and you may have to have a suture and things like that. So that I didn't want, like already I had told myself I don't have another child, and now I'm pregnant. So I was like, okay, thank you God for allowing me to be pregnant again and having another child. But I was anxious, like the anxiety was like, you know, sky high. I was always calling the maternity assessment unit. I was always at the GP. Whenever I felt something, I was always there. And actually, I nearly lost my baby because at around 12, 13 weeks pregnant, I remember feeling some funny pains again, like the first ones. And I remember going to the GP and they, you know, checked the speculum and they sent me to the guy and they did a scan and they were like, everything seems fine. But I remember saying to my husband, no, it's not fine. Something is telling me that something is wrong. And this time around, my instincts were like there, like it was like sky high. Like, yeah, I felt something was wrong. And on the Monday, I had my routine consultant appointment and I was going to cancel it because then I was going for every 2 weekly scans. So when they scanned me, I remember he just put the internal scan and he quickly took it out and he was like, dress up and we need to talk. Basically, I was like, dress up and then we can talk after. And I just looked at my husband, I was like, yeah, he's dead. Like, that's it, he's gone again. And he was just like, basically your cervix has shortened again, like it has shortened to like 1 millimeter or something, like it's very short. Your cervix is shortened, like we're gonna have to put a suture in to do surgery on you, like now. It was around nearly end of the day. It wasn't possible to do that day. So the following morning, I went in and had the suture. So it was literally like a stitch holding the baby in, basically. And I had that for the duration of my pregnancy until they removed it. And then eventually I went into labor. But the whole pregnancy, I was anxious. I kept on having nightmares. I kept on thinking my baby's going to die. Then he came and it got worse. I don't know if I had postpartum depression because the midwife and the health were like, we don't really think it's that, because it kind of like died down a little bit after like 4 weeks. But I was literally having nightmares of him dead. I would wake up every 10 minutes to check if he's breathing. I would literally put my finger here to check if he's breathing. I would always have him. I didn't want him to sleep on his own. We slept with him in our room. He's nearly 2.5 now, and he's still there. Like, me putting him in his room is never going to be a problem for him, but it's going to be a problem for me because I'm still anxious. I feel like something wrong is going to happen because you're always having that, and it's from the first loss. So it is something that, you know, I'm hoping to address, because I think I'm also in that state where I'm really scared to seek therapeutic support to kind of address that, because maybe something is never going to happen to him. It's going to be, he's 2.5 now, he's here, like he hasn't, you know, sometimes I look at him like, okay, he's still here, that should be a comfort, but you always have that at the back of your head. And for me, it was more traumatic being pregnant with the second and him coming more than it was during the loss. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe people are different. There are some people that I've heard who are like, I've just lost my baby, like I'm gonna try now to have another one, like I need to have one quickly. But for me, it was very different. But again, God had other plans, because we didn't even plan the pregnancy. I just was like, oh my God. And then, you know, the anxiety. So it's different for every person. You know, I do always pray and hope that, you know, I can gather the courage to go and seek therapeutic support to address this, because you know, it's I can't change what may or may not happen to my son. But it's affected me. I don't want to have other children now. Like I feel like I don't want to have another one. But again, like what you were asking earlier, people are always like, when are you having another one? You should have another one so that they grow together and all that. And I'm like, no, you know, I can't. It was the mental, the trauma of like every 2 weeks I was getting internal scans, you know, going through surgery to have the suture and then having them removed and all that. Is not a nice experience for anyone to go through. I didn't like that at all. It was traumatic. So again, you get those questions like, have another one now, you know, they grow together, do this, do that. But some of us are still dealing with the trauma from, you know, that has come from the loss to the pregnancy again, to the giving birth to the child. So please stop asking us to have another child. Like, don't ask us that. It's not nice.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Hopefully somebody has learned not to ask.
Well, yeah, I guess that's something that takes away a lot from the experience in itself. Like from me, it took me 3 years to consider another child, because I was like, the stress of appointments, the stress of dealing with, you know, uncertainty, because when you have preeclampsia, they want you to be taking aspirin from 12 weeks, and then you have the weekly, you know, scans and all that stuff, the 4 weekly appointments. It was just one thing after another, which we had to literally be, I would say, mentally and physically prepared for. And when baby came, it was during COVID. So the process of having a partner in the room with you, appointments, that had changed. So every scan appointment, I was going in on my own. So I was very anxious, because I'm thinking, if they told me that news from 3 years ago on my own, how am I going to handle it? Because before, I had my husband holding my hand to cope with it. So yeah, it's difficult to reconsider having more children, because that process in itself was difficult, not knowing how you're going to respond to it. And sometimes I guess your body and your mental form as well, or all the time, I believe, plays on each other. So you have to be in the right place to consider having more children. And I guess that question, Debs, I'm still getting it now. I've got 2 children and they're still saying, you need to have another one. We need a girl. I'm like, excuse me. Do you know what I went through?
Yeah.
So, it just brings back a lot of uncertainty and memories, which are not nice anyway. So yeah, that's my contribution.
Yeah. All right. I guess we about to wrap up now, but before we go, I think there's this question where I've always wondered, you guys have come and agreed to share. Did you just start like that, or initially it was difficult for you to share this story? And at what point did you have this much courage to actually share your own story? And then whilst you're answering this question, then you can tell us something that you just want the viewers to have, you know, like a take-home message before we close. And I'll give a chance to each of you.
I think, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think a lot of people knew that I was expecting. Because of the sickness, the week before I miscarried, I had said to my husband, I'm so ill. I'm going to need you to ask church to pray for me, because I can't do this anymore. So I had asked him to kind of just put the message out to say, can you just pray for Rebecca? She's expecting. So a week later, when I wasn't expecting anymore, I had to kind of share the information. I couldn't be like, oh, surprise. Do you know what I mean? I had to let people know that this is what's happened. So another message went out then to say, actually, this has happened. And I think he was stronger in his faith than I was. So he kind of fell back on his faith as something to get him through the situation that we were in. But I didn't feel that way. So I delivered my child on the Sunday morning, and then the following Sabbath, he was like, let's go to AY. I just thought, I don't really want to go to church. I don't really want to speak to people. That's not really where I'm at. But I went anyway, and I was so like devastated to be there. And I was trying not to cry. Everybody knew what had happened. And I remember speaking to one lady, and I said to her, I'm really angry. I don't want to be here. I'm angry at God. I'm angry at church. I don't want to be in this scenario. And she said to me, that's okay. And I just remembered her saying that, because everyone else was saying, you know, as we said, the cliche things, oh, it will be okay. Someone said to me, oh, maybe you just can't carry boys. You've got, you know, you've been pregnant before, you can get pregnant, so that's a good thing. And people saying all these things, and I told her I was upset, and she just said to me, that's all right. Like, you're allowed to be upset. You're supposed to be sad about this. That's okay. Like, your feelings are okay, and your feelings are valid. And I think it took a little while. I actually think I didn't really share anything until my due date. And it just so happened that the hospital put on a memorial service each year, like one a year, for the babies that are lost from that hospital. And it fell on my due date. So we went to it in the chapel at the hospital, and they do a balloon release. And that was kind of the first time that I really publicly shared it. Like, I put a post on my Facebook to say what happened. And I think by that time, I felt like I can't be the only person that's going through this. And it's been hard for me, and it's hard for other people as well. And I'm happy to have conversations with people. So that was probably the point when I thought, actually, I can probably talk about this to people outside of my circle. And I shared the post, and I said, if you know anybody that wants to talk, you know, I don't have to know them. If they just want to talk to somebody that they don't know, then tell them they can contact me. I'm happy to have those conversations. I think that was the point where I thought, okay, I'm not on my own here. And it's like, it's a bittersweet feeling, because you are happy to know that you're not on your own, but you're also so devastated to think that other people are going through it as well. Like, it's really hard to kind of explain how you feel. But in terms of a takeaway thing that I would say to people is, don't feel like ashamed or embarrassed, and don't feel like you have to talk if you don't want to. But if you do want to, then do. And you shouldn't feel like this topic is too taboo for you to speak to somebody about it. As I said, I'm happy to talk to people. If anybody ever wanted to talk to me, I know I spoke to somebody who I didn't really know very well as well, actually. I was sending messages on Facebook and just checking in to say, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And they talked about the services that they've been able to access. And it can be helpful to have a conversation with somebody who is not in your inner circle, somebody who you don't feel like you're burdening, because I think I felt like I was burdening my friends. Like, I was talking about it to them too much, and it must have been draining for them to hear me talk about it again, because I was just so sad. So it can be nice to talk to somebody outside, but yeah, just don't feel ashamed if you're going through this. And as Deb said, if you think that something's not right, just ask somebody to check you. I know with my daughter that was born 2 years ago, I actually called Stacey, because I was like, oh, I'm not sure if she's like moving properly, and I've got a bit of pain. And Stacey was like, just go to hospital. Like, what are you waiting for? Why are you on the phone to me, not going to hospital? Just go. Like, and I got there, and by the time I got there, she was moving around like a maniac. And the midwives were like, do you know what? We've checked you now, and you're okay. But they'd rather that they checked me and I was okay, than I stayed at home and I wasn't okay. So just go in, just find out, ring up your early pregnancy unit, ring up maternity, ring whoever you have to ring, talk to somebody if you need reassurance, and they'd be more happy to see you, and there'd be nothing wrong than you don't speak to them at all.
That's right. Yeah, I can relate to that, because I being able to have that conversation, and the hospital that I then went to when I had the two boys, they were so reassuring, and my midwife as well. I felt like we had a connection. They understood where I was coming from. Going back to the question that you asked in terms of what inspired me to share the story, from where I come from, I've just felt it's been a stigma for too long. To not talk about our experiences, women not being allowed to go to the funerals, women not being allowed to cry about it. It inspired me to name our lost son. We named him Melchiah, which means God is with us. And we opened a charity, an association to support women within the BAME community, to say it shouldn't feel alien to talk about loss, because it's happening out there. And why is it for the Caucasians they support? Why is there no support for us? I remember speaking to one of the CEOs of SENS, and she said to me, it's amazing that you're wanting to do something like this, because our model was derived for the working class white woman. And now we're having a mix of people coming. And I appreciate you wanting to do something to say, you know what, break the silence for the one who feels they're voiceless, because it's something that's missing, particularly within my community, something that's unique to talk about this conversation. So this is where I found my strength to say, the more I spoke about it, the more I found my healing, if that makes sense. I've met women who've said, till today, I haven't cried for my child, I don't even know where my child is laid to rest, and that pains me, because now I'm dealing with two griefs, that I've lost my child, and the other grief is that I don't know where my child is laid to rest, for even to go and see, and say a few words if I need to, or even just have that memory to say, this is where my child is. So this is where I found my strength. And I guess for everyone, the experience is different, but I found my strength in more talking about it. And my music as well, when I'm singing, this is where I found strength, because I'm reaching to someone within my music. Some of my lyrics, I talk about that loss that I've gone through, to say, God has made me overcome this situation, and I remember writing my album Inyasha, because this is when we had our first son, because I thought, this is God's grace, that I've been able to birth my child, and I have to sing about it in a song. So this is where I found my strength overall, that I speak about it. I don't have to share my story as it is, but one or two lyrics in my music will show what my testimony is.
Amen.
For me, thanks Rebecca and Sharon for sharing your experiences as well. I shared my experience firstly 8 months after I actually lost a baby, and that was on Facebook. I was actually writing a book, still trying to write it. And I just shared like an excerpt from the book, and I posted it on my Facebook. And I remember the messages I got from people who have gone through the same. And some people didn't know I was pregnant, because it's something that I hadn't told a lot of people. The people who knew are people who lived near us, and people from church and my friends. But it's not something I'd shared on Facebook like we're expecting or anything. So those who didn't know, they didn't know. And so for people to know we'd been through, and now obviously you're getting people then also coming to comfort you and all that. But I had gotten to a point where I had, because before we left the hospital, they did a photo shoot of the baby. So they did a professional photo shoot of the baby. They did handprints and footprints, and they put all the images on a memory stick. They gave us a memory box with like a blanket in there, which I swapped. I wrapped the baby with it, and I took the baby to the hospital, given him into the box. There was candles, there was a lot of things in the box, and a little book in there. So I took it home, and I had just gone through the box for the first time without feeling emotional. So I'd gone through the pictures on the memory stick. I put it in the laptop, and I was looking at the pictures, and I looked at them, opened the box, and because they'd given us a card in there, but I wrote a letter to him. before he was buried. I wrote a letter and they put it in the coffin with him. I told them to put it under the blanket with him and just take it. So it was the first time I'd like gone through the box, through the photos, and I was not emotional too much about it. And so I decided to share the experience because I felt someone must be going through this. I'm going to encourage someone. So it was, for me, was 8 months after. One thing I'm going to say to just take away, and this is the bit that gets me so emotional. Guys, NHS is amazing. I don't care what anybody says. We need to respect our NHS. These people treated me like royalty. They treated me like I've never been treated like by any other health professional before. These guys, they know what they're doing. If you've had a bad experience with NHS, it's not the same for everyone. Don't paint them with the same brush. These doctors, they trained for this. They know what they're doing. Nobody goes to work and plan to kill someone's baby, to kill someone, to do something. They don't plan that. If it happens, then it was probably meant to happen. It's not, they don't go planning to do it. Mistakes happen, yes, but the next time you see somebody who is a midwife, if you see a nurse, if you see a doctor, if you see anybody who, please just respect them, you know, clap hands for them. If you're in the queue to get food and you see a doctor in their uniform or at the hospital in their scrubs, they probably come from a surgery, whatever, just give them, just respect these people because they're so amazing. They're amazing. Tatiana, Stacey, you guys, I value you so much because of the work that you do. Like, it's, I don't have words. I remember when I left the hospital, I just wrote a card and I just couldn't, and the nurses cried. They just came to me and they were like, we just read your card, and we cried because I was writing it in tears because I could not explain how important their job is. Like, they will prioritize they prioritize to save lives. Like, you come in, all they're concerned about is your well-being and you being alive and being happy and being comfortable. You know, things do happen, but honestly, I don't know. I don't care what anybody says, but our NHS, it's 5-star, okay? It's amazing. I've had people who've had my experience. I read a story in Zimbabwe of a woman whose baby died. She carried the dead baby to the hospital. When she got to the hospital, the baby was dead. And she was told that actually you have to get a police report or whatever. She had to carry the baby, the dead baby, to the police to get a report. She got there and then she had to carry the baby back on her back because she doesn't drive. She's in some village in Chirezi in Zimbabwe. I read that story and I said, this was me. This was me. I lost a baby. This woman is me. But the difference between me and her is that I live in a country where they actually do care about our lives. And so the treatment that you get is still 5-star, but it's free. Yes, we pay tax. But please, the takeaway today, if you've had a bad experience with NHS, I don't know, I don't want to, you know, undermine any other person's experience. But from my experience, one day when I get rich, I am going to also make sure NHS is rich. Like, I will do anything for NHS. Guys are amazing. So for anybody who's listening who works for the NHS, I just want you to clap your hands for a minute because you are valued, you are respected, and you are 5-star, and I love you.
Thank you so much. Stacey, then you can conclude for us. If you don't mind, when you're done, you can pray for us and then we'll close the program.
Okay. So when did I feel ready to speak about it? It was probably at least a year. I mean, what do you say when you're so sad? Like, you're too sad to speak. And because most people, unless they've been through it themselves, they just don't understand. And with all the comments, as we've already mentioned, that people are giving, just really not helpful. And so it wasn't a positive experience for me to speak about it. And it was very, what's the word? I like to keep my personal things personal, so I don't just discuss them with everybody. So it did take a long time for me to talk about it. I think the first time I really remember talking about it was actually at work. I had a patient come in and I had to break the news to her that she was miscarrying, and she was so absolutely devastated. And she was just, it was like she had no hope. And I was pregnant at the time with my second, and so that was kind of the first time I shared my story, and I was like, look, I was in your position just a few months ago. I know exactly how you feel and what you're going through, but it doesn't mean that there is no hope. Look, I'm pregnant now. It's no reason why you can't be as well whenever you feel ready, if you do feel ready, and if you do decide to in the future. So yeah, it took me a very long time to think about it, to talk about it, sorry. Take home messages. From a personal point of view, I'd want to say along the same lines as Rebecca, all these little cliche sayings that we say, particularly as Christians, particularly as Adventists, just please, let's just stop, because they're not helpful. A lot of the times they're not true. And I don't think they really reflect the love of God as he would have us reflect his love, because he's going through the same thing as we are. He understands our pain. He's hurting just as much, if not more, because they were also his child. And I think it's really important that not everyone feels like this. Some women miscarry and they feel fine. They don't have any of these kind of trauma feelings, but it's not the case for a lot of women. I think it's really important to just let them be, to let them have those feelings, to validate them, and not to try and rush them through the grieving process, to understand that no matter whether they were 5 weeks pregnant or 5 months pregnant, it's still a loss. They've still lost a child, and that's going to take time to get through. From a professional point of view, I think what I would say is a lot of women tend to blame themselves. Usually there is nothing that you can have done to stop the miscarriage. There are some things that you can do to try and reduce your risks. There was a news article a couple of weeks ago that said Black women are 43% times more likely to have a miscarriage. So there are definitely things that we can do with regards to getting ourselves in the best shape physically before we contemplate pregnancy. So that's things like, probably not applicable to most of this audience, but stopping drinking, cutting down alcohol, cutting down caffeine, making sure you're a healthy weight. If you have pre-existing health conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, thyroid issues, lupus, make sure you go and see your GP beforehand, see your specialist beforehand, make sure your medical conditions are optimized, because that's what's really going to help you try and have the best pregnancy and the most successful outcome. So those are really my takeaways. I think if no one's got anything else to add, then I'll close in prayer.
Just one more thing. Thank you, ladies, for sharing your testimonies, and we pray that someone out there was watching or will watch later and think that there's a light at the end of the tunnel for anyone going through this. And we've heard so many, if anyone has gone through something like this and is wondering where they could get help, there's Miscarriage Association that you could go to, Tommy's and Cruz Bereavement Care, and also many of you ladies have mentioned Stands a lot, and hopefully when Sharon's charity also comes up, what's the name, Sharon, of your charity?
Melchiah Foundation.
Okay, the Malchiah Foundation. Whenever it's ready, let us know. We'll put it on our page, and anyone who needs help, please visit all these groups and associations that will be able to help you. You do not have to suffer alone. There's unfortunately there are people out there who've gone through the same, and find the thing that works for you and make sure you get help. Thank you, Stacey, and may you please pray for us.
Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this beautiful Sabbath day. I thank you for this program that's been put together by the Young Couples Ministries on this really important topic. And I thank you for all the families here represented who were so kind enough to share their experiences. I pray for all of the families here, and I pray for your continued hand on their lives. I pray that you'll continue to help those who are still experiencing trauma from their experiences, and that your peace will be felt in their lives. I pray for all of those who have been touched by the things that we've discussed in this program as well. I pray that they will have been signposted as to where to seek help. But most importantly, I pray that they will understand that they're not alone, that this is a really common occurrence, but most of all, that you also are there with us. And experiencing it along with us, and that it's not a sign that you love us any less, but you are also there right with us in the mix. And I pray that they will take comfort from that. I pray that you'll continue to be with everybody here as well as we leave, that you'll continue to bless all of our families and our homes. In Christ's name, amen.
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 Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you.
Nice
Bye.
to see you, Tatenda.
Bye.